Nick, I don't want to waste too much time. I feel like when a new podcast launches, a hit new podcast launches, they just waste a bunch of time fiddly farting around.
Oh yeah, this whole like preamble, like getting way too like, let's not build it up. Let's just get right into it.
Right. I don't want to assume that this is the only episode of this podcast that people ever listen to. And that we have to like get a bunch of stuff out of the way. I want us to like get to the meat, the heart of the matter. We can introduce ourselves. I'm Griffin McElroy.
I'm Nick Robinson.
We work for Polygon, but we're getting into a new business now. We're not just like looking at, playing, talking about games, and then shitting all over them.
No, we are shitting on them way earlier in the process now. We had figured we could cut out the middleman.
We don't have a name for this podcast yet. I suggested Dr. Polygon's Game Clinic.
And I kind of went out of my way to not give you a yes or a no on that and kind of let you reach your own conclusion. It's kind of...
If anything, we are the wet nurses, the midwives of created game ideas.
I think there's something to that. We're the game midwives, right?
That's bad. That's also a bad name.
We're the game epidural.
It'll come to us.
All right, we'll get there.
Well, then let me hit you with this for a potential podcast title, Boy 1 and Boy 2.
I like that. It's got a Seussical thing that I think I wasn't expecting going into this.
Is Game Boys taken?
I think as long as we make the S capital to make it really clear that it has nothing to do with Game Boys as the Game Boy, I think.
Well, I was thinking it would be Game Boys, capital S, and then TM.
Game Boystem. So it's like the trademark thing, but like embedded into the title itself?
No, it would be the actual trademark. And it would also be the same font as the Game Boy.
Okay.
And also it would be called Nintendo's Game Boys is the name of the podcast.
All right, I've got a category. I've got two lists.
CoolGames Inc. is a bit of a different beast from Carboys and Touch the Skyrim. For starters, it's a podcast. The concept is as follows. Listeners come up in 1 or 2 lines with the idea for a video game, and then Nick and Griffin riff on that idea to elaborate it and to reappropriate it into their brand of comedy.
How about this one from John Dude, bro? I'm obsessed with this. Tony Hawk, but with trucks.
Oh, that's a very visceral image right off the bat. Like, I immediately picture a big wheeler doing like a 50-50 grind.
Side B, which is Good Soy Bun on Twitter, says, boy band maker, like style-savvy trendsetters, but for boy bands. Choose the names, the style, the themes, etc. This is so good. I'm imagining a sort of rhythm game RPG with a bit of Lemonade stand simulator in there, only instead of Lemonade, it's boys, and they're singing and dancing. If you do good, you earn more money, and you can use that to upgrade your boys with augmentation.
They'll often come up with a title and a tagline for each suggestion, and I'll go through many of them in every episode. At the end of it, they have to settle on which is the best potential video game, at which point they bring in a guest to whom they have to pitch the idea.
All right, I think the one we're going with is this virtual. It's got to be VR based, right? Like let's totally establish some facts. VR based, rhythm karaoke game, MMO musical. What are we calling this thing?
I mean, lately we've been figuring out the names with the help of a special guest, and I think this could be our chance to do that.
What about Broadway Dreaming?
I don't know about Broadway Dreaming. I'll put it in my back pocket.
How about Broadway Baby?
I do like. Okay, see now you're just speaking my language directly.
How about we call it Fiddler on the Rift?
Fuck. I guess we do. Does that? I don't want to box out the
Vive.
Yeah, the Vive users or even PlayStation VR.
All right. Well, it'll come to us. I think it's time that I think this nug is polished enough. I think we should get our special guest on.
Alrighty, I'll bring her on.
Since it's a comedy podcast, the ideas they come up with are rarely practical and would often be really challenging to implement in an actual video game. But at the same time, the boys are very imaginative. So a few times during the series, they actually came up with ideas that would make for some genuinely fun or innovative games. Or for some ruthless cash grabs. Okay, so once again, I haven't listened to CoolGames Inc. in a long time, so I shouldn't remember the podcast too much, and the joke should still land with me. I remember really liking the show. I remember the first episode is hilarious. Grandma Wants It Al Dente, I think it's called, which they come up with a silly Wii game that they kind of remake throughout the podcast because it was pretty much their best idea. I really was into that podcast. And I also got into the podcast right before Nick was canceled. I think they posted one or I got into the podcast, I binge watched it, binge listened to it in the bus and after my homework and before going to sleep, just binged it. And I remember taking baths. I wouldn't take a shower, I would take a bath instead so I could listen to an episode. Crazy man that I am. And just loving that episode, and then whoops, they never make it again. Oh yeah, let's try this one. CoolGames Inc. Jr. Why hasn't anyone made a video game about the TV show Monk yet? Great title already.
Welcome to CoolGames Inc. Jr. I'm Nick Robinson.
I'm Griffin McElroy, back at it again with the video games.
We are, and we're hopping right into it. This is an image submission that I assume was taken from the Super Mario Brothers Wikia, one of my favorite websites. Tell the people at home what you see.
So this is Wario, and he's standing atop a pile of vanquished enemies.
Okay.
Are those Koopas under his feet, or are they? What are they?
Well, according to the caption, Griffin, this image is Wario beating up dinosaurs outside of hell.
Oh, that's
so he's holding a couple pterodactyls by the fucking throat, and he's standing on a couple of Koopa-looking dinos.
And let's be clear, by our measure, this is an official canon Nintendo rendering. This is not fan art.
Let's just confront the hard truth here, and that is that when Wario dies, he's going to hell. He's going to go to hell.
Definitely.
And there's just obviously he could repent if he wants, but if he did that, I think he'd have to change his name because that dude's whole brand is like Mario but evil.
Dude, he's having such a good
loves
time.
Hell.
Autoerotically asphyxiating these brontosauruses. I guess it's not autoerotic if Warren is doing it for
Dad,
you.
Come here. I got this cool new game I want you to
Grandma
check out
and
with.
Grandpa.
Oh boy, yeah, that's not very grandpa-friendly.
I want to introduce you to a sinner named Wario. And so he's just choking out these dinos, and they are Lovin loving it.
Is this like Goofus and Gallant?
This is a lot like Goofus, and it's a lot like Gallant. If Goofus died and went to hell and then choked out some dinosaurs to give him boners.
What is Danny DeVito doing to that bird? Why is he touching it? Why is the bird smiling and rolling its eyes back?
Danny DeVito would play Wario.
That's a good point you've made here. How about this one that was sent in by Kennard, non-vampire, Kennard Smith on Twitter, who says, why hasn't anyone made a video game about the TV show Monk yet? So there's a version of this that I think your parents are really going to love, which is just Tony Shalhoub as Monk, the video game, the Telltale game, probably. That's the easy, lazy, shitty version, right?
Yeah.
The better version of this is sort of an expose about the games industry and how the wheels get greased and turn.
Ooh.
These greasy wheels. And the title of the game would literally be, why hasn't anyone made a video game about the TV show Monk yet? And you're sort of an investigative reporter at a video game website.
Tell me about this investigative reporter. Do they resemble Monk in any way?
Shit. No. You get a tip there's a dark reason why they haven't made a video game of the TV show Monk yet. Ask the right questions, pull the right strings. And then you have to pull the right strings and find out oh my god, pretty much everybody, fucking Gearbox, Bethesda, everybody's taken a stab at making a video game of Monk, but nobody's really followed through with it. Who's shutting these down? What's the conspiracy? Pull the Monk threads.
Yeah.
Is it Tony Shalhoub? Warren Spector is all right, gang. We just went gold on Epic Mickey 2, The Power of 2.
Now we
can finally move on to Epic Monk. It's the project we've all really been. What's that? Somebody's here from Disney? Oh, we're all fired. No, not before my Monk dream came true.
Okay, here's one from Alyssa Entropy who says Wonder Trade, but for phone apps. So Griffin, you and I should Wonder Trade an app right now. Let's flip through our phones.
Oh,
you pick an app, I pick an app, and we'll
Dun, 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 dun. All right.
And WhatsApp. Fuck.
Let me find my most embarrassing
and
app.
parameters.
I think I've got a good contender. 1, 2, 3.
WWE 2K16 Creation Studio.
Okay.
I think we go with the Monk game, and I think we fire that one off, and I think that's our nug.
All right,
and I think that's a good game. It's just a
it.
video game because we're gonna learn a lot about the industry. You know,
sure.
like it's a video game about video games, and but not like fucking another ripoff of the like game dev games.
Yeah.
Like it's just like. How does it really work? How did the wheels really get greased? And you and I know this shit, Nick.
Oh,
like
we've lived this. We know we know why there's not a Monk game. We know why.
We know why all the Sonic games have been fucking super shitty.
Unfortunately, we're not allowed to talk about it.
I wish I knew.
One of the dark secrets.
We'll be back next week with another short one, and then come October, we'll be back to our usual format. Thanks for sticking with us through this transitionary period, and I'll talk to you next week. Till then, I'm Griffin McElroy.
I'm Nick Robinson.
No problem, fun.
No problem, fun. Okay. Well, it wasn't too bad. I'm kind of bummed out I didn't laugh much. I guess the CoolGames Inc. juniors weren't as good. Gonna have to revisit more of them. It was pretty fun, I mean... Yeah, I guess the bits didn't get to me, and there were no guests that time, which, you know, the guests really add a lot of fun to it. It's a fun format. It was fun duo. Just shooting the shit about video games, and, you know, it's just another, you know, contrived way of just hanging out talking about video games, which is pretty much every video game podcast out there. I think what's really fun about that series is not so much, you know, the games they come up with. They don't really come up with any good games, but it's more the horrible DRMs they come up with, or the stupid systems they come up with, the DLCs, the way to get more money. It becomes so satirical. That's the real fun part of this podcast. That, and of course the audience participation, that's always fun, of course, you know. Done reacting to CoolGames Inc. and let's get back to the review. So now I'm back from listening to about 20 to 25 episodes of CoolGames Inc. in the last few days. The reason I haven't gone through them all again is because, well, there's 70 episodes of 1 hour each. So that would have taken a long time, and it would have taken me even longer to get this video out. Plus, I already saw the series twice before all the way through. So now this is my third time going through it. So, you know, I remember it well enough, and I got enough of a taste, I believe, to give you my review. So yeah, I ended up listening to about the first 10 episodes, then to a couple of episodes near the middle, and to the last 10 episodes. That way I could refresh my memory. And I had a pretty good time watching them, just like I remember I did when I first watched it. CoolGames Inc. benefits from having a very cool format. To begin with, the average episode begins with Nick and Griffin doing a post-mortem on the video game they conjured up in the previous episode. This translates into a comedic improvisation on how the video game was either a massive hit or a spectacular failure. Then they'll often go into a tangent about either an item of video game news or a new release that has them excited that week. This is the part of the podcast which is more conventional and acts more as a hangout than as comedy. There, you get to peer into Nick and Griffin's personal lives and catch up on what's going on with them. On a good recording session, those hangout moments will only get peppered in once in a while dollar episodes are full of them and they start taking huge chunks of the runtime. Then we arrive at the real meat of each episode, the part where Nick and Griffin pitch to one another listener suggestions, and they riff on them to elaborate and distillate a great game idea out of them. Something innovative and something funny, comedic, but also something that would be nice to play. Throughout the series, listeners come up with quite varied game ideas, but since they know the boys' peculiar brand of humor, I've noticed they tend to gravitate around certain themes. For instance, you'll often have ideas for cooking games. And after all, their first episode was a cooking game involving dungeon crawling and grandma scanning DRMs, so that's not all that surprising. You'll also often get ideas that rhyme or that form puns, references to Sonic, Mario, Wario and Waluigi, or ideas about proprietary peripherals you have to buy with the game. And finally, if the boys manage to book a guest for that episode, they'll bring them on and pitch their best video game ideas to them. In the better episodes, the guests will bring in their own energy and their own ideas, and they'll join in the riffing with the guys to make the idea even better or funnier. For example, episode 5, called Glasshouse, is a gem, because the boys already came up with a pretty good idea to begin with, but then they pitched it to Dave Lang, an actual game producer, who took their idea and ran with it. If you only have time to watch one episode, I highly recommend that one, because the part with Dave Lang had me roaring with laughter. But overall, what's my rating for the podcast? I give CoolGames Inc. 3 out of 5 stars. As I said, it's a great podcast concept that yielded some of my favorite podcast moments and that had me laughing quite a lot. And the episodes in the beginning, the first 10 or so, and the episodes at the end are definitely the best ones. But I remember that on my 2 previous listenings, it took a long time in the middle before it got good again. And when I went back to listen to some of those episodes, they were pretty boring. And by the way, the episode I reacted to was indeed from this lackluster middle portion. If the podcast was of more uniform quality, I would probably bump it up to a 4. But since there are so many filler episodes, and since a lot of them are quite scattered, then I can't give it more than a 3. CoolGames Inc. is a fun podcast. It's great for video game enthusiasts, and it has its moments of pure hilarity. But since the quality is not consistent, I wouldn't recommend you dedicate yourself to the whole 70 episodes. Instead, start with the first few episodes, and once it gets boring, just skip ahead. Or, if you're really committed, then stick around and you'll hear more about Nick and Griffin's personal lives. Because, like many podcasts, this one doubles as a sort of hub for the fan community around its creators. Indeed, when it was still airing, you could go there to hear about what was going on with the guys, what they were up to, what was the next series they were working on, what was going on in their personal lives, and you'd get to just hang out with them, having genuine conversation together. And listening to it now, it gives you a window back to that lost era. Hey, thanks for watching! Did you know this is a clip from a longer video? If you want to check out the whole thing, you can click on the screen right now, or look in the description. And while you're there, would you give me a little like and a subscribe? I would really appreciate it.